Today is April 10th and I have a new hunting rifle. I recently purchased a Tikka T3x Lite. It weighs 6¼ pounds. It's stainless steel. It has a nice fluted barrel, and this will be my new rifle. It's basically indestructible. I don't have to worry about rust, any corrosion. And for the top of my Tikka, I purchased a Vortex Black Diamond BDC Rectical 3-9x40, which is more than enough power for the Pennsylvania woods. This is extremely clear. It has a lifetime guarantee, so whatever happens to this, it can be replaced or repaired. And that's what I like, lifetime warranties. We'll set up our scope. Range time will be in another video, but today we're going to tear the gun apart and I'll show you how I set up my rifles. And this gun will get hunted very hard. I also looked at a Savage 110 with a carbon fiber wrap barrel that was about $500 more. The Savage 110 Ultralight with a carbon barrel has a 1-year warranty on the barrel, but most of my guns have scratches from me dropping it and banging it against stuff, so I was very reluctant. To spend that much money and have the barrel crack, or I drop it on a rock and take a big chunk out of it. A lot of my guns have chunks taken out of the barrels from me leaning them against the rocks and the trees. Sometimes you trip and fall and drop them. The gun will go flying, stick in the ground, or bounce off of something. Synthetic stocks are pretty much indestructible compared to wood. They will not crack as long as everything is properly assembled. With the strongest gun I ever hunted with was a 4570, and the 4570, because it had so much recoil, I actually JB welded my scope rings to the gun, and the top two pieces of my scope mounts were actually JB welded down. I Loctited it, but it continuously kept coming loose, and that was the end of my accuracy problems once they got JB welded. So no JB weld for my 308. Okay, so now we're gonna disassemble our stock here. Now we're gonna strip our gun down and clean all the packing oil out of the grooves, and then we will clean our screws and alcohol and Loctite everything back together. There actually is a method to your madness when you reattach the barrel to the stock. Everything has to be tightened down in a certain way. Tikka requires a T25 Torx bit. If you have one that's all chewed up, it will ruin the screws on your stock. So I just purchased these. I have 3 brand new ones. What we're going to do is take the 2 screws out of the back of the stock, and there's also one in the middle here which has a Torx head on it. I'm not sure what that's supposed to do. It doesn't attach to the barrel. Take the one out behind the trigger guard first. Most of the work done on your stock is, most of the pressure is on this back bolt, so this has to be properly cleaned and properly torqued, or your impact will shift because your gun will actually move inside of your stock. I have a wooden gun vise here. I don't see these anymore. This actually came from Cabela's. Most of the gun vices you have now, they're all basically plastic. Sometimes wood is better for certain things. Okay, there's 2 screws out of my stock. We will take the 3rd one out here. And I also have a big mat on top of my work area, so nothing will get scratched. Nothing will damage my countertop either, and if I spill something, it stays in the mat. Maybe a little closer here. You can, let's see here. Now I have all of my screws out. I have them lined up in order that they were taken out of the stock. So I have one here, one here, and one here. Now we're going to pull the barrel out of the stock. Hear a little click there. Take my stainless steel barrel out. We're going to remove the clip. Take the clip out. Okay, so we have you look in here, you have a bedding block here. Get my hand out of the way. There's the hole for the main lug. There's the one in front of where the clip goes, and there is another hole here. This extra hole was probably for another sling mount or an attachment up here, because there's one here and you can put one here. But I'm going to Loctite that in because it actually doesn't do anything. Okay, so we have some oil in here, which stripped down off the barrel. They actually cover it in oil for long-term storage, so we're going to clean all that off of there. Rubbing alcohol seems to work the best. Sometimes there actually is packing grease in here. This just seems to have a light coating of oil. Because the barrel is stainless steel, you won't get any corrosion on this. So now I have threaded area behind the trigger. I have one in front of the bolt that I'm going to clean with alcohol and a Q-tip. And this will help the Loctite grab a hold once all this area is degreased. So while the alcohol is evaporating in the holes in my stock, I have all the screws that I'm going to use in a little glass jar here soaking in alcohol. Even though they have thread lock on them, you can get a little bit of oil in there, and when you start putting your scope on your stock, they can come loose. And I have learned that lesson the hard way in the past, so now I take no chances. All of my screws and little parts are soaked in rubbing alcohol. It's a very inexpensive remedy if you are a major accuracy problem. And then on the side here, I have a blue thread locker. I have red thread lock, so I have two of those. There's a lot of scope mounting options. My first go-to is always loop-holed base, loop-holed rings, and because it's a 3-to-9, I have a medium ring. If I had a 50mm objective, then this would have to be a high mount, but most scopes will take a medium. And then if the scope bell does not clear the barrel, then you'll have to start shimming it up to get it to clear. My Browning X-bolt, the scope that I had actually kept touching the barrel. I couldn't get it to sit in the rings, so I got some shim stock, and I actually made shims for that, and they were JB welded to the bottom part of the rings. That worked out very well. So there's always ways to get around things that don't fit. Okay, everything is soaking in the alcohol. So now we're going to reassemble our stock in our barrel. We're going to put our stock back into my vise here. This is actually a gun vise. And actually we're going to put this in this way. There's a little click. You can hear the little click. The barrel in this gun is free floating. And my prediction for accuracy with my hand loads, I should be able to get a 1-inch group out of it. Tikka guarantees a one MOA of accuracy out of this rifle. But you have to buy better rifle ammo. If you use cheaper ammo, your accuracy will probably suffer a little bit and you'll have large groups. Most rifles today should be able to shoot a 1-inch group or less. A lot of times the rifle's capable of it, but if your gun isn't set up the right way, or your scope isn't set up right, you won't get these tight patterns. Okay, so here's all my screws soaking in here. I'm going to get a rag here, and we're going to take some of them out of the alcohol. A little pair of pliers here. Take them out, let them dry off. And you can see my scope ring screws are still inside of there. I'm going to leave them in there for a little bit. If you can see that through the glass, there actually is a little drop of blue Loctite on there, but I'm actually going to clean that off with a brush, and I will re-Loctite the entire screw. Don't get in a hurry when you're doing this. This isn't a rush job. You only want to do this one time. I don't take the stocks off of my gun unless it gets soaking wet when I'm hunting. And then I will disassemble my stock from the barrel and let it dry out, wipe it all down, and then after a few days, after all the moisture's out of the gun, I will clean the barrel and then put it back into the stock. And what I will do is I'll take a little brush, actually a cleaning brush like this, and I'll scrub the Loctite out of the threads, which will take all that out. This is actually a bronze bore brush, and usually what I'll do is I'll use one. See what's hiding in my box here. I'll usually use a 22 caliber bronze bore brush because the bristles are very stiff, and it will make the screw look like new. It'll take all the Loctite material out of there, and then I'll clean it, screw it back in there, and it's good till next time. If my gun doesn't get wet, I won't take the stock off the barrel. It's really not necessary. So this is my recoil lug. This one's actually right behind the trigger. You can use a torque wrench. I'm going to shake this up and mix up all the chemicals in here. This one here I might actually put red on. I want to put red on this bolt. Not a lot, you just need a little tiny bit. If you ever torque this, you'll actually strip the threads out of your gun, and you'll have to take it to a gunsmith to get them to drill that out and retap it to a bigger size. If you can look at this, you can see where the wear pattern is on the bolt, how far that actually penetrates into the action. It actually only goes in about 3/8 of an inch, so there's not that much contact in that spot. So basically, there's my red Loctite. That much of the bolt is actually keeping most of your gun together. Put that in there, and you always want to tighten this bolt up first. Never tighten up the middle of your barrel and then the back. You want to have your action tightened from the back to the front. That way your barrel seats it correctly into your stock. I can actually tell how tight that is because I've done this so many times. Okay, that one is in there. Now we'll do the bolt in front of the trigger guard. And this one here, I'm actually going to use blue Loctite because most of the pressure is on that back bolt. Again, you don't have to put a lot on here. Doesn't look like that mixed up. Shake this a little bit more. If your Loctite is old and you have a brand new gun, just buy some new Loctite. Don't put the old stuff on. The gripping strength of the old Loctite probably isn't as strong as you want it to be, and if you do a lot of range time, your screws will actually start to back out of your gun. That looks a little better. Okay, there's my blue Loctite. And we're going to put that in here. Tighten this up. Tighten it back up. And again, do not over tighten these bolts. When they put these together at the factory, they are not tightened. They are soaked in oil, and then they screw them into your gun. So if you take it to the range and you don't go through the process that I am, you will have some accuracy issues. You can actually damage your gun because the action is moving around inside of the stock. Tikka is built in Finland. I actually Googled last night what Tikka means. Tikka means elf. So I'm not sure how they got the name for the gun. A lot of the American guns you can't find. We have an ammo shortage, we have a gun shortage. This one actually came from my favorite store. And at the time, a background check, because it was so overwhelmed, the background check would take about 2 to 3 hours. So I was standing there for about 2 hours waiting for the background check to come back. I'm not sure where the local gun laws are headed, but I definitely wanted another rifle where I could still find it. And this came from Europe, so they have no issues with supply and demand like we do. Okay, there's my other Torx head here. Turn this down a little bit. Wait for my camera to catch up. I'm using a GoPro here because you can see me better. The big camera, you can't see me real close because of how the lens is shaped. Okay, so this one here, I believe, is another stud. For like an accessory. You could put a bipod back here, and then your sling up here. Okay, so the screw in front of the trigger guard, this has blue thread lock on it, and the one behind the trigger guard has red thread lock on it. Okay, these three are tight. Now I have two sling mounts that I'm going to take out. These people never give their sling mounts any thought. Find an old Allen head for this. If you're holding your gun up and down the tree, up into your tree stand, and you have a rope attached to your sling, sometimes this has a tendency to unscrew and fall out. This doesn't have a lot of threads on it, and the back one also does not. I've had both of them come out on me. So now I actually take these out, either glue them or thread lock them into the stock. My front sling mount here, this has a brass insert. And the back one here is usually screwed right into the stock. If you would strip this back one out for some reason, and you have a synthetic stock, you can actually drill another hole in your stock, and you can just move it over and then fill in the hole that was there. This has no oil on it, and this one has a little bit of oil on there. You can see it on there. It looks kind of greasy, so we'll put that in alcohol. And this one here is going to get JB welded. So we're going to mix a little bit of epoxy up, and then we will screw that stud back into the stock. Yeah, usually I do this with a little piece of cardboard, and you don't need a lot. Just a very tiny drop is all you need, or a pea-sized drop of this. If you put too much hardener in it, it'll get too hard too fast, and it may not reach its full strength. So try to get the same amount on both. Just mix this up till it totally turns gray. You can see how much of the threads are coated with my epoxy. This will actually set up fairly quickly, so you can't wait too long to complete this process. We're just going to lightly screw this in so it doesn't cross thread. Put my piece of cardboard over here. I don't want any epoxy inside of that hole, so make sure. I'm going to use the Allen key to tighten it up once I get all the epoxy off my finger. Okay, and this is approximately the same size hole that's in that stud. We're just going to lightly turn this in there till it centers up. You can see the epoxy coming out the sides. My stud is now square, and whatever came out around the threads, I'm just going to clean off here with a Q-tip. I'll wipe the excess epoxy off my stock. If you leave that sit on your stock, it'll actually ruin the finish. You'll never get that off. Okay, that stud will never come out. That'll be there forever. That's what I use to put that stud in my stock. Okay, now we're going to do the stud in the front. This one's soaking in alcohol. So now we're going to let this dry off. Old cotton t-shirts work wonders for cleaning your firearms. So there's my stud. It's nice and clean. It's perfectly degreased. There's my stud hole. And that actually has a brass insert in there. And brass is actually very soft. So that one there, I'm actually going to put a red thread locker on it instead of blue. Brass actually strips out very easy. So I know if that brass insert in there strips, I'm going to have to put some kind of a lock nut in there. And then what I would do is I would just epoxy it in there so it stays there. There's my red thread lock. And then we're going to put this one back in here. Hex head here. Don't over tighten this because it'll strip it out. That's all the screws on my gun that I actually need to give some attention to. Let's spin our Tikka T3 over. Now we will put this in the vise the way it's supposed to be. So this has a groove in it here, so you could put different kinds of mounts and actually clamp onto the groove. The loophole will bolt into the 4 threaded holes up here, and I'm actually also going to clean that out with alcohol and a Q-tip. Just put a little, dip your Q-tip in alcohol and just kind of go in the holes here. That'll take a few minutes to dry. So we're going to pull the bolt out for this. Take our nice, here's the bolt that's in it. Very small handle. It's actually hollow. That's probably how they reduce some weight. They also have grooves. There's also fluting in the barrel, which also will lighten your gun up a little bit by ounces, not pounds. Okay, I'm pre-fitting my screws. Make sure I have no issues with the threaded holes in my receiver. Things pre-fit, no issues there. And these screws are going to use blue Loctite. And these two here that go on our front ring, I will also use blue Loctite. Make sure when you do this that you actually have the correct size to fit on your threads, because if you don't, it will chew up your threads on your screws, and you will not get the proper tightness. You can buy a set of gunsmith screwdrivers very inexpensively. They're about $20 or $30, and they will have multiple bit sizes in there and different handles. I paid about $40 for this. If you own firearms, you need to have one of these. You can't just use off-the-wall screwdrivers. These bits are precision ground, so they fit your screws very tight. You have to have a very tight fit when you screw them in, where it will strip all your screws out. Everything is pre-fit on the gun. As you can tell, my bases are on there. Everything is threaded in. I had some issues with this back hole here, and the screw on this side didn't want to go in there, so I'm going to guess there was some grit in there when they put the finish on here. And like I said, there can be debris or grit in the threads, and if you don't pre-fit it and then you put Loctite on, you can actually cross thread your screws into there. So everything is on there where it's supposed to be, and they are hand tightened in there. So now that I have these two in here, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to back them out one at a time and thread lock them down. There's not a lot of meat on those tiny screws. I don't know why they don't make them bigger, but this particular firearm, they're very tiny. And you can strip these out extremely easy. Now this screw I'm actually going to soak with blue Loctite because it's so tiny. Very gently put that in there. Don't torque down on it yet. You want to torque your bases down evenly, so everything is straight when you start to tighten down on stuff. And that one doesn't want to come out either. There we go. Now we got him out. Now we're going to do the rings. Okay, my bases are on the gun. I have both of them in there. We're going to let the thread lock material set up a little bit. And now we're going to do our rings. So basically one of these is a dovetail and the other one screws in. So usually the one in the front, you can move the scope back and forth through this screw here. And the dovetail goes in the back. They actually make a tool. Loophole actually makes a tool to put this in and turn this. But you can put a screwdriver in there, or I use a wooden dowel, and then it turns sideways and locks. But it's very critical that both of those are straight, or if you over torque this, you can actually damage your optical. So this is the most critical part, next to not stripping out your thread holes in the bottom here. And I'm actually going to take my scope out and actually see if that lines up. See what our scope looks like sitting on here. So hopefully, so I should be okay. I have enough clearing underneath the bell in the barrel so that won't touch. If the front part of your scope is touching your barrel, then you need to shim it up. And there again, you might want to go to a gunsmith to do that if you're not sure how to do that. Because if you shim it up, both rings need to be shimmed at an even height. So that should be okay. We'll set my scope aside here. Okay, now we're going to let our thread lock set up in there. And I'm going to take a break here. Took about an hour for me to clean those screws and hand fit everything in there together. The hole in the back mount back here was kind of loose. That didn't actually fit very well. This one was tight, this one was tight, this one was tight. So this one back here actually has red thread lock on it because that one didn't seat properly. So there is an issue with that threaded hole. The other three are fine. This one actually seated very well. The one on this side I had some issues with, and sometimes the finish that they put on the scope bases can clog those threads up. So I did have issues with it. The rear mount has a dovetail hole in it. So what it does is it turns in sideways like this. And again, you can have, I use an adjustable wrench. You could use a dowel, you could use a screwdriver. Loophole actually makes a tool for this. But I found that an adjustable wrench, a 10-inch adjustable, actually works fine. So you can see what I'm doing here. Here's my ring. Put that in all the way. I get it to turn. Put this in the base and then turn it. It's actually very tight. Loophole makes extremely accurate mounts, but you have to put everything on tight. So there it is. Make sure that it's in alignment to where it's supposed to be. You can actually adjust this a little bit once it's in there if you don't think it's square. You can dial it in a little bit. Okay, that takes a muscle to put that in there. You have to make sure that it's in all the way. And the next one here will be the one in the front. Okay, this one here, it has little grooves cut in the base. You can see the grooves on the sides. Here's a better look at it. And this kind of sits in the middle like this. And you're going to tighten this in slowly till it's dead center. Move some of my stuff out of the way here. Okay, this one, I have a flat bit in my screwdriver. And you want to make sure that you have the correct bit for this, because if not, it will actually mangle the screw up in here. And you will not be able to tighten this up to the proper tightness to keep your scope from moving. You just tighten one side down till it looks like it's in the middle, and then tighten the other side down. You have to make sure that this ring is adjusted correctly to make sure that your scope is straight. Okay, you can tell. Moving around here, you can tell that I have plenty of clearance on there. The receiver on this is actually kind of high, and most of the American guns are set up a little bit different. This actually has a bigger taper here. I actually could have used the low mount on here, and it would have put the scope closer to the gun. That's actually a little high, but we'll take it to the range and shoot it. We'll see how it shoots. If it doesn't shoot very well, then what I'll do is I will take the medium rings out, and I will actually put a low ring in there. You have to make sure that your bolt can clear that. The top of our rings, and I'm going to use a screwdriver for this with the Torx head. You want to make sure that you don't over torque this. You want your scope rings to come down evenly on both sides. Do not cock your scope rings or it will actually damage your optic. I'm going to go to a blue thread locker. Red isn't necessary. This is not a heavy recoil round. 308 is about the middle of the road as far as recoil. 30-06 is a little stiff, and once you start getting up towards a 300 Win Mag and caliber, it starts to hurt. Scope mount is complete. Thanks for watching PA Timber Goose. Hopefully you enjoyed me setting up my new deer rifle, my Tikka T3x and my Vortex scope. And in the fall, hopefully this will get me a nice bear or deer. And as always, thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next video.